Welcome to the village, good evening, traveler, and welcome to another quiet story from the forgotten corners of time. Let your shoulders relax. Take a long, slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your thoughts to drift far, far away, to a place where the days were simple and the nights were soft. Imagine, if you will, a quiet valley tucked between rolling green hills. There, nestled beside a winding river, is a village, small, modest, but alive. The sun is low on the horizon now, painting the sky in strokes of gold and ash. The light filters through the trees, warm, dappled, and flickering like candlelight. A light breeze rustles the tops of the oaks and chestnut trees, and somewhere in the distance a raven calls once, then falls silent again. The air carries the scent of turned earth, fresh hay, wood smoke, the kind of scent that says home, though no one here would call it that. It simply was the only world they knew. As you follow the dirt path worn, smooth by 100 years of footsteps, begin to see it more clearly. A cluster of cottages, their walls made of timber and clay, their roofs thick with straw, steeply pitched to send away the rain. Wisps of smoke drift lazily from holes in the thatch, signs that the hearth is burning. And perhaps something simple is cooking, a stew of lentils and barley, maybe turnips from yesterday's harvest. No windows made of glass, just shutters. Maybe cloth pulled tightly against the dusk and the cold. A dog lifts its head and watches you pass, but it does not bark. In the distance, a bell rings slowly. 1, 2, 3 times. Not the church bell. No. This one comes from a hand. Perhaps the village herder, calling in the last of the cattle. You? Hear the soft slap of leather shoes on soil, the clinking of tools being set down for the night. A voice, low and melodic. A lullaby sung in a language no longer spoken. There is peace here, but not silence. Not the kind of sterile silence we know today. This silence is full, alive, crackling gently beneath the surface. Everything in this village has its place, its rhythm, its meaning. The people who live here do not rush, rise with the sun and rest with the stars. Their lives are slow, steady, shaped not by ambition or urgency, but by the turning of seasons, the cycles of harvest, and the will of the earth beneath their feet. And tonight, dear listener, are one of them. So come. Stay a while. There is so much to show you. The heart, the village green, we begin, as all things do. At the heart, not the grand manor, nor the chapel, but something simpler, more humble, more alive. The village green. It is not fenced, is not guarded. It belongs to everyone and no one. A broad patch of open grass, irregular and soft underfoot, worn bare in places by centuries of footsteps, hooves, and wheels. The ground is uneven. Here a shallow dip where rain collects in spring. There a patch of wild chamomile, blooming quietly with tiny white stars. In the earliest light of morning, dew settles on the blades like glass. Children come running barefoot, chasing chickens or each other, their laughter rising like smoke. By midday, the green hums gently. Sheep graze lazily. A few women sit on low stools mending linen, their fingers moving slowly, surely. And somewhere, always, someone is telling a story. A peddler might wander through, his cart creaking, full of pins and dried herbs and tales from the next county over. Villagers gather near, curious and cautious. They rarely travel far from this place. It green becomes a market, a theater, a gathering hall under the sky. By late afternoon, it grows quieter. A cow breaks loose from the common pasture and is guided gently home. The baker's boy dozes in the shade of an elm. Even the dogs sleep in stillness, their ears twitching at flies. And then comes evening. The sun lowers behind the trees, and everything is bathed in soft amber light. There are no torches here, no lanterns, only fireflies, flickering like ancient stars reborn. Villagers begin to gather again, not out of obligation, but instinct, to share warmth, words, and the kind of silence that binds people together more tightly than speech. The green is where weddings are danced, where disputes are settled, where midsummer fires are lit high into the night sky, crackling and leaping, carrying wishes in their sparks. Even in winter, when the earth is frozen and the sky is a gray sheet pulled low, the green remains the soul of the village, a space both empty and full of memory. And as you sit at its edge now, listening to the wind rustle through the tall grass, you begin to understand something. This is not just land. This is belonging, a silent thread, binding neighbor to neighbor, generation to generation. Story to soil. Let the green hold you, if only for a moment, and when you're ready, we'll wander a little further. It's the crooked cottages that surround it like watchful eyes. But there's no hurry. We have all the time in the world. The cottages and home step with me now, off the green, and into the narrow paths that wind between homes. They aren't lined in stone or cobble. No, these are dirt paths, soft and rutted, pressed by bare feet, wooden carts, and time. On either side, the cottages lean slightly, not from neglect, but age. Timber bones creak in the wind. Thatch roofs, thick and golden brown, slouch gently under their own weight. Like tired old hats, each cottage stands close to the next, though the villagers say this is not from planning, but from necessity. You build where there is space, and space, in a world like this, is never wasted. Let's step inside one now. Duck your head, the lintels are low, built for smaller frames and colder winters. Inside it is dim. Only a faint orange flicker comes from the hearth in the center, the heart of every home. There is no chimney. The smoke drifts slowly upward and out through a hole in the thatch. It lingers near the beams, leaving them soot-black and glossy with years of memory. There is one room, maybe two if the family is lucky. The floor is packed earth, swept daily. Clean, though never polished. In one corner lies a bed, a wooden frame stuffed with straw and dried heather. Children sleep there in piles like puppies in a den. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Parents nearby, often wrapped in heavy wool, even in summer above. A small loft, if you can call it that. It's just wide enough for a few sacks of barley and perhaps an aging grandmother, who sleeps curled among them like a cat. There are no cupboards, no shelves of plates and pans, a few clay bowls, a knife passed down, a wooden spoon worn smooth by 1,000 stews. By the hearth, an iron pot bubbles slowly. You can't tell what's inside, but it smells of turnips, maybe leeks, and a hint of smoked pork from last year's salted cut. There is no clock to tell the hour, but the village knows the rhythm. A rooster's crow, a distant bell, the length of shadows across the doorway. You hear the muffled hum of voices, the mother, whispering a story about a wolf that wore shoes, the baby hiccuping softly in the dark, the firewood crackling in protest as the chill night leans in. Outside the door, a bundle of herbs hangs, meant to ward off sickness, or bad luck, or whatever nameless thing the villagers can't explain, but still fear. These cottages, they are not grand, not decorated, but they are alive. Every beam, every stone, touched by hands and weather and patience. This is not poverty, though by today's measure, it might seem so. This is a different kind of wealth, the wealth of belonging, of family and survival, of knowing your place in the turning of the world. And tonight, you are welcome here. There's space by the hearth. If you'd like to stay a while, the stew is hot. The stories are just beginning. The fields and farming strips the earth here is old. It's older than any map, older than any name you or I could give it. It has seen the rise and fall of lords, the passage of seasons, and the soft imprint of thousands of bare feet. It remembers things we've long forgotten, out here beyond the cottages and the green. Past the crooked well and the smithy's glow lies the true lifeblood of the village, the fields. But they are not what you might expect. These are no grand estates stretching endlessly to the horizon, no perfect symmetrical rows of crops, no barbed wire, no tractors. Instead, the land is split into long, narrow strips, each one perhaps a few meters wide, but stretching far, tapering off in the distance like lines drawn by a child's uncertain hand. To our modern eyes, it may seem chaotic, disorganized? But here, there's purpose in the tangle. These strips are scattered among 3 large open fields rotated by season, one planted with winter crops, one with spring sowing, and one left to rest. Fallow. The strips are assigned to individual families. No family owns an entire field. No one has dominance over one corner of the land. Instead, each household's plots are spaced apart, scattered like seeds thrown by a wide and even hand. Why? Because nature is fickle. Rain may bless one hill, but ignore the next. Pests may destroy one patch and leave another untouched. By spreading their efforts, each family shares in the risks and in the bounty. This is a system built not on power but on survival. The soil is heavy in places, light in others. Villagers know it by feel: which corner holds water after the rain, which patch drains too fast. They speak of the soil like an old friend, sometimes like a stubborn mule. Some strips are used for wheat, the most prized crop, turned into bread by the communal oven. Others are sown with barley, used for ale, or rye, for the hard bread of winter. A few may hold peas or beans, which enrich the soil with their roots, and always, somewhere in a corner, a bit of space is given to flax or hemp. These are not just crops, they are threads waiting to become clothing. Sacks, rope, even the weeds have their place, gathered at the edge, boiled into salves and tinctures, whispered over by the oldest women, their knowledge unrecorded. But rooted deep, work begins early. Before the sun clears the hills, the villagers are already in motion. Boy carries water in sloshing buckets. A girl lifts a rake taller than she is. Men lead oxen, yoked to wooden plows, the animals snorting into the morning mist. They do not speak much. The work is too important for chatter. Their movements are practiced, passed from hand to hand across time. The plow carves slow furrows. Into the soil, you can hear it, the groan of the beam. How the suck of damp earth. The creak of the yoke across the oxen's shoulders. Behind them, a woman scatters seed. Her hand moves in a wide, practiced arc. Grain falls like rain, silent, steady, and then the waiting begins. Spring is a time of hope and worry. Too much rain, and the seed rots. Too little, and the shoots wither. A late frost, and all is undone. The villagers do what they can. They dig drainage trenches. They light small fires to warm the soil. They whisper old prayers into the wind, though whether to saints or spirits, no one quite says. Birds come, as they always do. Rooks and crows, clever and greedy. They peck at the seeds and must be chased. Children are set to the task, waving sticks, shouting, tying scraps of cloth that flutter in the breeze like ghost flags. Summer brings green. Long stalks rise from the earth, reaching for the sun. The fields sway in unison like a sea of grass. Stirred by an unseen tide, by now the work changes, weeding, watching, waiting at midday, the sun beats down. Villagers rest in the shade of trees, eating bread and onion. They share water from a goatskin flask. Sometimes they sing low, repetitive songs with no clear beginning or end, not for performance, but to keep rhythm with the slow turning. Of the season, there is beauty here, but not the beauty of riches or display. It is the beauty of usefulness, hands that know what they are doing. Of people who live with the land, not upon it. Then comes harvest. It begins with the first browning of the grain heads, signal as clear as any bell. The entire village moves as one. Scythes are sharpened. Sickles passed down from grandfather. 2 grandsons are pulled from pegs. Rope is twisted from dry grass. Baskets are patched with care. The fields ring with the swish of blades, rhythmic, careful. You must cut just above the node, not too low, not too fast. Children gather the stalks, tie them into sheaves. They carry them in arms full as laughter. Elders rest under trees and watch their faces carved by years and sun. It is not just labor, it is ceremony. And when the last sheaf is bound, when the sun finally dips and every finger aches, the village holds its breath. The grain is taken, in-dried, ground in the manor's mill, or traded, or stored in sacks and sealed with beeswax to keep the damp and mice at bay. This grain is not just food, it is life. each loaf of bread, each bowl of porridge, each sip of ale. Traces. Back to these fields, to this quiet, coordinated dance between human and earth. Even in winter, the fields matter. Though they lie still beneath frost and snow, they are not forgotten. Men walk their boundaries, checking for erosion, marking spots for next year's planting. Some patches are left open for grazing geese, who peck and fertilize as they go. Children sled down the fallow slopes on planks of wood, their laughter bright against the pale sky, and in the evenings, by candlelight, the women mend seed sacks. Men repair yokes and harnesses, and they all talk softly, always softly, of next year's planting. The fields are not just geography, they are memory. Each strip has a story. This is where your mother first sowed wheat. Here, your uncle broke his plow and had to till with a spade. There the sunflowers once grew wild, and we let them stay. There is no deed, no written map. But there is something deeper, a shared trust, a silent contract, an unbroken line between soil and soul. And as you walk now, slowly along one of these strips, you feel the imprint of all those who came before. You feel the patience in the earth and the gratitude in the air. You are not just a guest here. You are part of it. Even now, even in stillness, you belong. The pasture and common land beyond the fields where furrows end and open land begins lies a different kind of space, wider, wilder, and yet just as essential. It is known as the common, sometimes simply the pasture. Here, the land belongs to no one and to everyone. Not parceled or fenced, not measured by rods or marked with stone. It is shared not by grace, but by ancient agreement. A space where the rules soften, and where nature speaks in slower syllables. It's early morning again. The dew rests, like silver lace over every blade of grass. Mist curls in the hollows where hoof prints from the day before still hold a bit. Of rain, you can hear it. The soft bleating of sheep, the low hum of cowbells, a sleepy grunt from a tethered pig. This is the domain of animals, and of the quiet people who tend them. The common land serves many purposes. It is a grazing ground. For livestock, sheep nibble at the short grasses, tugging with their tiny teeth. Cows move slower, heavier, deliberate, ripping clumps from the earth, tails swishing against invisible flies. The pigs are different. They root through the underbrush, snorting and digging, hunting acorns, chestnuts, roots. Anything they can find beneath the leaves. These animals aren't pets. They're partners. They give milk, meat, wool, leather, and labor. Their health is the village's health, and so the common herder walks among them. A quiet figure wrapped in coarse wool, a staff in hand, a dog at his side. He knows each beast by its shape, by its gait, by the unique curve of a horn, the rhythm of a breath. He speaks little, but whistles carry far. Sharp chirp sends the sheep back to line. A low tone calms the cows when thunder stirs on the horizon, in the far edges of the pasture. Where the land rises into drier knolls, children gather. Kindling, deadwood, twigs, dry branches shaken loose by the wind. Their hands are small, but fast. They fill baskets with care, laughing softly, always softly, as if the land might wake if they made too much noise. Some elders gather wild herbs from these spaces. Chamomile by the stream, thyme near the old stones, plantain in the shaded dips. Others come to cut peat, used for fuel in the hearths. Dark slabs of ancient moss and thyme lifted slowly from the wet earth and left to dry in tidy stacks. Still others come to gather berries in the hedgerows, gooseberries, blackberries, and sloe. Their fingers stained purple and red, their mouths quiet and sweet. Nothing is wasted, nothing is hurried. And when autumn comes, something special happens. The trees that edge the common land oak beech, chestnut begin to drop their bounty. This is pannage season. Villagers bring their pigs into the wooded edges, and the pigs feast. They eat acorns by the mouthful, snorting, snuffling, even fighting now and then. It is their season of plenty. This natural feeding fattens them for winter and saves grain for the people. It is loud, here joyful, chaotic, but always purposeful. Children run among the trunks, driving pigs with sticks, gathering leftovers. Watching carefully for signs of the wild boar who also roam here. Not far from the grazing animals, there's a quiet little pond. It may seem humble, but it's as vital as any well or field. This pond serves many. Cattle drink from it. Geese glide across its surface, hissing softly at one another. Ducks splash and dabble, leaving soft ripples that catch the sky. On its muddy edge, you might see footprints, not just from boots, but from bare feet and cloven hooves and paws. It is a meeting place. Sometimes the women come here to wash wool. They kneel in pairs, hands red from cold water, rubbing fleece against boards. Chatting in low tones about weather, births, and the Lord's temper, even in winter, when the pond freezes over. Children come to slide across its surface, squealing, slipping, falling, only to rise again, breath puffing in little clouds at night. The pasture changes, the animals are led back. Some to pens, some to barns, some left tethered under the stars. The shepherd heads home, dog at heel. The children, now tired, walk slowly, dragging their bundles of sticks, their bellies full of hazelnuts and roasted beet, and in the quiet that remains, the land exhales. The grass breathes frost. The moon rises, catching in spiderwebs and cow tracks. An owl calls once, then again the common rests. But not forgotten. This land is free. Yes, but only by tradition, not law. Its freedom is fragile, held together by memory, by cooperation, and by constant negotiation. Each villager knows what they may take and what they must leave. Too many sheep, and the grass thins. Too many pigs, and the trees are stripped bare. Too much gathering, and next season brings nothing, so there are rules unwritten but understood. The reeve watches. So does the bailiff. But more than that, the land itself watches, and the villagers know. If they take too much, the land will simply take back. Sometimes during festivals, the common becomes a place of gathering. Maypoles are raised, bunting, strung between branches, flutes and drums played with joyful, imperfect rhythm. It is here that dancing happens, here that songs are sung late into the evening, feet stomping in the same dirt where cows graze by day. The laughter echoes through. The trees and even the geese seem less grumpy on those nights. This space, shared by all, becomes something greater, not just a pasture, but a place of memory, of unity, of life that pulses quietly beneath every leaf, hoofprint, and root in the dark of winter. When the fields are sleeping and the roads are slick with ice, the common still gives. Wool sheared in spring becomes cloaks and mittens. Smoked pork from foraged-fed pigs hangs in the rafters. Peat fires crackle in stone hearths. Its baskets hold dried herbs and windfall apples. The land holds its people, and the people hold the land. No contracts, no coins. Only shared. Use mutual need and time-tested trust as you walk its edge now, imagining the sound of soft hooves on frost-hardened grass, or the flick of a cow's tail in early summer. You feel how old this space is, older than fences, older than flags, older than you. This is the pasture. This is the common land. It gives without pride, asks only that you give in return. The Lord's manor and domain as you walk further up the winding path. Beyond the cottages, past the fields, beyond even the commons and the pasture land, you will find a place that sits slightly apart, not distant, not aloof, but different. Here, upon a gentle rise, not quite a hill, not quite flat, stands the manor house. It is not a castle. No stone towers or crenellated battlements, no moat, no drawbridge, but even so it commands the eye. Its timbers are darker, its windows broader. Its roof is steep and solid, tiled with thick wooden shingles that glow when wet. There is a hush around it, a sense of waiting. You have arrived at the domain, the heart of the Lord's land, and the quiet seat of power in the village. The manor is more than a house. It is the center of authority, a place of decisions, of storage, protection, and sometimes judgment. The Lord may not live here all year. He may only visit, especially if he holds many manors across the shire. But when he is here, his presence is known. His banner flutters from a tall pole. His steward moves briskly through the village, inspecting, noting, quietly calculating grain and labor owed. Still, this manor is not a fortress. It is a home, and in many ways a farm. Surrounding the house is the domain land, the personal holding of the Lord. Unlike the peasant strips in the open fields, this land is worked for him and him alone. These fields are close-cropped and meticulously maintained. Here the soil is turned with extra care. The seed is selected more deliberately. The yield, when harvested, is stored in granaries near the back of the manor hall. Peasants from the village work these fields not as their own, but as part of their duty. It is called week work, a certain number of days owed each week, when the men and women come, bending to hoe and plow the Lord's land. They do it without complaint mostly, because it is the way of things, because in exchange they are protected, because to disobey would invite trouble, and so the domain flourishes. Behind the manor house sits the barn, a great wooden structure with thick beams and a sweet earthy smell of straw and grain. Here the tithe is kept, portion of every peasant's. Harvest, taken as rent or obligation, it's piled high in neat rows of sacks and bundles. There is rye and barley, wheat and oats, carefully labeled and separated in colder months. The barn holds more than grain. It shelters tools, yokes, carts, and even oxen. There is a hum of movement here, even when the rest of the village sleeps. A flicker of torchlight as a servant checks the sacks. The scurry of a mouse, quickly silenced by the manor cat. The manor house itself is quiet. It's not silent. It is larger than the peasant cottages, with a wide hall, tall ceilings, and floors. Made not of packed dirt, but sometimes of timber or even stone. Smoothed by years of boots and brush, a large hearth dominates the main hall. Its fire never fully dies. Above it hangs blackened iron pots, filled with slow-cooked stews and porridges. Long wooden tables stretch down the center, with benches worn from elbows and mugs. Here the Lord dines when he is present, with his family, his steward, and important visitors. When he is absent, the steward takes his place, holding court, making records, hearing disputes between villagers, or issuing orders for repairs, rotations, and taxed that everything that happens in the village finds its echo here. On certain days, the manor becomes a place of justice. Disputes over boundaries, quarrels between neighbors, stolen chickens, broken promises, and missing tools, all are heard beneath the wooden rafters of the manor hall. The manorial court is not cruel, but it is firm. Fines are levied in pence, or in kind perhaps a day's extra labor, or a basket of eggs delivered by candlelight. Rarely someone is punished more severely. But these moments are quiet, handled away from the children, spoken of only in whispers. The law is part of life. As solid as the stones in the hearth, behind the manor lies the kitchen garden. It is the pride of the manor cook, a patchwork of herbs, greens, and root vegetables laid out in tidy rows, bordered by woven willow fences. Here grows sage, parsley, onions, leeks, and rare things like fennel or mint. A few apple trees stand to the side, bent slightly from the wind, but heavy with fruit in late summer. The cook's apprentice tends them in the early light, brushing dew from cabbage leaves, plucking snails from lettuce, and murmuring to herself as she works. The garden feeds the house, and sometimes the sick. A corner is given to the herbalist, who gathers comfrey, marigold, and yarrow, drying them in bundles above the fire. For use in salves and teas, a narrow path leads to the stables. Here stand the Lord's horses, sleek, tall, and better fed than many villagers. There is the riding mare used for travel, the pack horse, broadened, dependable. And if the Lord is a man of battle, there may even be a destrier, a war horse, muscular, proud, and temperamental. The stable smells of hay, sweat, and leather. It is always warm. It's always alive with the gentle sound of munching, the soft stomp of hooves, and the occasional snort in the dark. Boys from the village work here too, learning to curry, to bridle, to ride. It is hard work, but they do it with a strange joy, because here they are close to power, close to motion, close to something greater. The Lord's family, if present, lives in the upper chambers of the manor. These are modest by noble standards. A bed raised. Off the floor, thick woolen hangings to block the chill. A window with oiled parchment, or, if fortune smiles, real glass. They are not kings, but they live well. They eat finer bread, white and soft. Their clothes are dyed in deeper hues. They read letters and keep ledgers sent from farther lands. But they are also part of this place. They walk its paths. They speak to the steward. They pray in the village church, and in winter, when the roads vanish beneath snow, they feel the same cold in their bones as everyone else. The domain is more than a title. It is a system, a way of managing land, people, and seasons. The peasants rely on the Lord relies on the peasants, and both rely on the earth. The manor is the spoke around which the village wheel turns. Quietly, reliably, its presence is steady. Its doors open at dawn and close late into the night. Its roof shelters grain, goods, guests, and governance. And even when the Lord is gone, the manor breathes. It listens. It remembers. As you drift past its wooden gates, the soft flicker of lanterns still glowing in its windows, you sense not just wealth, but responsibility. This place holds the memory of the land and the promise of its people. It is not just a manor. It is the village's anchor. It's the keeper of records. It's the receiver of harvest. The giver of order. Here, things are counted and weighed and written down. But more than that, here, things are kept safe, kept running, kept alive. The church and graveyard, there is a soft stillness to the edge of the village. Not because the land is empty, but because the presence here is different, gentler, older, strangely weightless. This is where the church stands, not grand or gilded, not like the soaring cathedrals whispered of in faraway towns. No stained glass saints, no marble cloisters, just a small stone chapel. Rough-hewn from the earth around it, it sits low to the ground, as if it wants to remain unnoticed. Save for the wooden cross atop its gable, faded and weather-beaten. But pointing always upward, its bell doesn't ring loudly, but with a voice like a sigh, slow, mournful, and sure. The path to the church is worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. It curls gently from the village green, skimming past the fields, between low stone walls laced with moss and wild thyme. No one runs here. Children instinctively lower their voices. Even the birds seem to sing differently in the shadow of the chapel walls. It is the village's quietest corner, but also its most important, because while the manor governs the body, the church tends to the soul. The door of the church is thick and oak-bound, set with a simple iron ring. It creaks open slowly, as if reluctant to reveal the world inside. Within, the light is dim, filtered through narrow slits of glass. It falls in beams like golden smoke across the flagstone floor. The air smells of wax and time-burned tallow, old wood, and the soft spice of dried herbs that hang in bundles above the altar. The pews are plain. Planks rubbed smooth by generations of hands and knees. No cushions, no carvings, just wood. Just silence. At the heart of the chapel is the altar. It is not lavish, merely a slab of stone covered in linen. But it holds a gravity no manor can match. Upon it sits a small wooden cross, a clay chalice, and a bound book with curling corners, the village's only Bible. The priest reads from it each Sunday. Though few villagers understand the Latin, still they listen, not for the meaning, but for the rhythm. The way the words roll like water. The way the candle flames bend whenever the priest intones something holy. It feels like something bigger passes through the room in those moments, something neither seen nor fully named. The priest is not a rich man. He wears no gold rings, no fine vestments. Just a long robe, patched in places, and a cord around his waist. He lives alone, in a small hut tucked behind the chapel, with a garden of onions, leeks, and dill. There he writes in long scrolls, his ink-stained fingers moving slowly over parchment. He is a quiet figure, but a constant one. He baptizes the newborn, marries the hopeful, and buries the old. He listens more than he speaks. And when he speaks, people lean in because he speaks slowly, and what he says always feels like it matters. Outside the church lies the graveyard. It is enclosed by a crumbling stone wall, often by lichen and time. Within, the grass grows. Longer than elsewhere in the village, not from neglect, but out of respect. No one cuts it short. No one walks across the graves unless they must. The headstones are simple, wooden markers often carved by the family, with names and dates written. By hand, some are barely readable, the letters worn to whispers by rain. Others are adorned with small tokens, a dried posy, a carved stone, a child's doll left for a lost brother, and beneath them, the village sleeps. Here lie the ones who came before, millers and shepherds, mothers and daughters, babies who breathed. Only a single day there are graves from the last great plague, and the bell tolled daily. The priest ran out of words for mourning. There are graves from famines. When the harvest failed and people passed quietly into the cold, but not all. Stories are sad. There are graves of those who lived long, who saw their great-grandchildren born, who danced at the maypole well into their winters. Each grave is a story, and the church remembers them all. On certain mornings, before the mist has lifted from the grass, a widow kneels by a grave, her hand resting on the wood, her lips moving in silent prayer. On certain nights, when the moon is full, the priest walks between the stones, sprinkling holy water, murmuring blessings to keep the dead at peace. The villagers believe that as long as the church stands, their ancestors remain close, watching, guiding, waiting. Church is also a place of gathering, not just for worship, but for shelter. When storms come and the wind howls like a wild animal, families press inside its thick stone walls. They huddle on the floor, wrapped in blankets, listening to the storm batter the doors, and still, the altar candle never flickers out. In times of fear, plague, war, rumors of witches, the villagers light extra candles. They pray longer. They kneel harder, and they wait for the world outside to grow quiet again. At harvest time, the church holds blessing feasts. The first loaf of bread is brought to the altar. The priest breaks it with a prayer, and everyone eats a piece. Thanks are given for the rain, for the sun, for the seed that swelled into grain. In spring, they bring flowers, primroses, cow parsley, and sprigs of hawthorn to lay before the Virgin's image. They ask for a safe birthing season, for strong lambs, for bees that stay close to the hives. The church listens. It always listens. Even the smallest child understands when the bell tolls. You stop. You look toward the chapel. You bow your head, not out of fear, but out of something deeper and old. Slow reverence that flows like sap through the roots of the village. When the world changes, when kings rise and fall, when coins are clipped, when lords are replaced, the church remains. Its walls may crack, its pews may splinter, but the prayers continue, whispered in the same voices, under the same roof, watched by the same sky. As you step away past the yew trees that shade the oldest stones, you feel the hush return. It settles around your shoulders. Like a shawl, it softens your footsteps. It slows your breath. The church is behind you now. But its peace follows, and somewhere deep in the bell tower, a weight shifts, ready for the next toll. The marketplace and trade in the heart of the village. Just beyond the worn footpath that wraps around the green lies a space that hums, not loudly, but with the soft, rhythmic pulse of daily life. This is the marketplace where barter speaks. Louder than coin, and trade is as much about relationships as it is about goods. It is not paved with stone. There are no grand stalls, no gilded signs, just packed earth, tamped flat by years of boots and hooves, lined with rough wooden tables and canvas-draped carts. And yet, it is here that the village breathes. The market days come on a rhythm of their own, governed more by the moon and the season than any royal decree. On those mornings, before the cock crows a second time, first traders are already stirring. You can hear them wheeling their carts, the iron rims crunching over gravel. The sleepy bray of donkeys and the gentle clink of wooden crates filled with apples, onions, and clay jars of honey by the time the mist lifts from the grass. The market is alive. The bakers arrive first, not with warm loaves, but with baskets still hot from the oven. The scent of rye, of oat and barley wafts through the square like a calling song. Their bread isn't perfect. It's lumpy, uneven, with cracked crusts and soft, damp middles. But it is honest, made from flour grown not a mile away. Beside them stand the cheesemakers. Their wheels wrapped in linen, aged in root cellars, carved into hillsides. They speak quietly, offering small wedges on the tip of a blade, letting flavor speak more than words ever could. In another corner, the fisherman from the river sells his morning catch. Not much, just a few trout, slick with dew, and tiny silver dace wrapped in rushes. He says little, only nods. He doesn't need to boast. His presence alone, damp and wind-bitten, tells the story of a man who rose before the sun and stood knee-deep in water so others might eat next to him. The butcher's boy stands, his apron stained and eyes bright. Cuts of salted pork, ribbons of fat, and chickens trussed by twine hang from his hooks. He speaks fast, trying to learn the art of haggling but still too young to bluff. Women arrive in pairs, their baskets heavy with herbs and tinctures, sage for the cough, yarrow for bleeding, lavender bundles to keep the fleas away. Their voices are soft, but their eyes are sharp. They know who needs what and who can pay. They speak in coded phrases, handing off poultices and infusions with the quiet confidence of centuries of shared, unspoken wisdom. In the center, a large cloth is spread over a table. Upon it are things you cannot eat, buttons carved from antler, combs of bone, tiny knives with handles whittled from ashwood. These are the goods of the craftsman, his hands inked with charcoal and callus. Each piece takes time, each one bears his mark. He does not shout. He waits. He knows someone will come, a bride looking for a brooch, farmer needing a new buckle, a child with a single copper piece to trade for a toy rabbit carved from pine. The barter is slow and deliberate. There are few coins here. More often, a sack of flour becomes a pair of boots. A bundle of carrots buys a spindle of wool. Each trade carries not just weight, but story. A man gives up a silver clasp, gift from his father, in exchange for a cloak. To keep his own son warm this winter, a woman offers her only jar of goose fat for a bundle of nettles to soothe her husband's aching joints. Every item on every stall carries a thread of someone's life. There is no shouting, no urgency, only murmurs, laughter, the occasional bark of a dog tied to a cartwheel. Children dart through the legs of animals, chasing each other, laughing in the dust. A musician with a cracked lute plays softly near the well. His notes rise like smoke, barely noticeable, till you realize your own footsteps are keeping pace with the rhythm at the far edge of the marketplace. A quiet figure lays out a blanket. Upon it, parchments, iron nails, dried apples, and a single feather quill bound in string. He is a peddler, not from here. You can tell by his boots' leather dyed red. Strange for this village, he speaks with a lilt, offers tales along with goods. No one is quite sure whether to trust him, but they always listen. And someone always buys something small, if only to hear another story. By midday, the marketplace is full, not just of goods, but of gathering. It is here that news is shared. Of a birth in the next hamlet, of a road washed out, of a beast seen near the woods. Here betrothals are announced. Here old debts are settled. Here, a simple nod between two men can mean the start of a deal that will last a generation. As the sun tilts westward, carts begin to creak once more. The bread is gone, the trout sold, herbs bundled back into baskets. But the square feels fuller than before. It's not just in pocket or pantry, but in spirit. The village has connected. Trade was made, but more importantly, so was conversation. The market is not just for the stomach. It is for the soul. When evening comes and the stalls are folded away, there is a kind of echo in the square. It is not a silence, but a remembering, of hands touching in trade, of laughter exchanged, of the quiet music still drifting from a single plucked string, and in the soft hush of dusk, the village exhales. The market sleeps, but tomorrow or next week, or when the moon is new, it will wake again. The blacksmith and the forge tucked near the edge of the village, where the trees begin to thicken and the air carries the scent of pine and damp stone. There stands a squat, sturdy building. Its walls are dark with soot, its roof sagging under the weight of time and moss, but from within, a glow pulses dim by day, but in the twilight, it flickers like a living heart. This is the forge, and inside, beneath a hood of smoke and shadow, works the blacksmith. He is not a loud man. He does not need to be. His hammer speaks for him. It falls in steady rhythm, a lullaby of metal against metal, heartbeat and iron. Clang, hiss, clang, pause. He wipes his brow with the back of a leathery hand. His face is lined not with age, but with years, with heat, with grit, with hours spent leaning over fire and steel. There is no door to the forge, only an opening, wide and dark. Inside, it is dim. The walls are hung with tools, tongs, chisels, curved hammers, and pliers worn to smoothness by use. In one corner, the bellows rest, great lungs of stitched leather and oak, waiting to breathe fire into the sleeping coals. Beside them stands the anvil, its surface dimpled like the moon, a record of every strike, every sword, every horseshoe born into the world from its back. The blacksmith does not just make weapons. In truth, he rarely does. More often, his trade is humble but vital. Hinges for doors, nails for carts, plowshares, pots, locks, latches, and every link. In every chain the village owns, if it is made of metal, it has likely passed through his hands. He begins each day early. Before the marketplace wakes, before even the birds begin to call, he is feeding the fire. First dried wood, then charcoal, then a pinch of crushed limestone to help the heat stay clean. The forge awakens slowly, a red eye opening in the darkness, growing brighter as he pumps the bellows with his foot, and then, once the coals are white-hot, he begins. He speaks little to visitors. If you bring him something to mend, a cracked sickle, a bent nail, he will nod, set it beside the hearth, and return to the fire. There is no rush to the blacksmith. Time is a tool measured not in minutes, but in metal, softened and shaped and cooled. Children sometimes gather outside, especially in winter, to watch the sparks fly. They press close to the edge of the opening, their breath clouding the air, their eyes wide as the blacksmith lifts glowing bars from the coals and hammers them with practiced grace. Each swing seems the same, but each one is intentional. The blacksmith knows when to strike, when to twist, when to quench the peace in the barrel of water that steams beside the fire. And when he does, the room hisses, a sudden burst, like the sigh of a spirit being set free. In a corner of the forge sits a grindstone, turned by hand or foot where blades are honed to sharpness. The blacksmith leans over it in silence, sending long, slow sparks, skimming off the edge of a blade, like tiny shooting stars. He doesn't speak as he works, but those who bring their tools listen to the stone's song, and they know by its pitch whether their blade is ready. There is a certain reverence in the forge. It is not sacred in the way of a church, but it holds power. Here, earth becomes strength. Here the stone gives fire, and fire gives form. There is something ancient in that rhythm, something older than kings. Even the village elders know if the blacksmith leaves, the village must follow, for a village without a forge is a village that cannot mend itself. Once a month, the blacksmith takes his cart through the neighboring settlements. He trades blades for grain, nails for wool, and stories for silence. He never hurries. Even on the road, he moves like iron, slow, steady, and unbreakable. When he returns, the villagers gather. Some bring broken scythes, others bring nothing. But thanks. He always smiles, but only slightly, as if kindness is a form of craftsmanship, and too much given at once might dull the edge. In winter, the forge is one of the warmest places in the village, not just in heat, but in memory. It becomes a haven. The children who once watched from the doorway are now grown, bringing their own tools, asking for their first knives, their first keys, their first marks of adult work. The blacksmith doesn't show pride, but he remembers every face, every name, every small, clumsy hand that once reached out to touch a cooled piece of iron and whispered, "It's warm." At night, the forge sleeps. The embers pulse beneath the ash, faint. Like the last glow of a dream, the blacksmith leans back in his chair, boots near the hearth, head tilted back. The tools hang silently around him, shadows stretch tall by thee. Fairly, for he and four in the silence hears all the village's needs hammered into shape, and he knows when the sun rises, his work will begin again. The church and the bell tower, at the highest point in the village, where the earth rises gently before sloping back toward the fields, stands a stone building with weathered walls and a wooden door that never locks. Its spire leans slightly, just enough to catch the wind, and atop it sits a small iron bell that tolls not just to mark the hours, but to hold the passing of time in gentle rhythm. This is the church. It watches over the village like a guardian, not fierce or imposing, patient as if it has been there always, even before the stones were laid. The church is not grand. Its walls are built of limestone and river rock, gathered by hand and stacked with care. The roof is thatched, like the cottages below, and in the winter, snow settles there quietly, as though even the weather treads softly near its sacred walls. Inside, it is cool and dim, lit by narrow slits of window and the flicker of tallow candles. The air smells of beeswax, old wood, and peace. There are no pews, only long benches, smooth from centuries of wear. Lined in neat rows along the packed earth floor, at the front stands the altar, a simple slab of oak covered in linen, bearing a wooden cross and a bowl. For water beside it, a single Bible, chained to a lectern, its pages curled with age, its words in Latin, read by few but heard by all. The village priest is a quiet man. He does not seek grandeur or fame. He knows his flock, the children who squirm during morning prayers, the elders who sit with hands folded in silence, the mothers who whisper lullabies behind veils during funerals. He walks the village daily, offering blessings not in words, but in presence, a hand on a shoulder, a nod at a passing cart, a moment beside a grave. On Sundays, the villagers come before the bell rings. They walk slowly, not out of obligation, but out of habit, a rhythm born of generations. They carry no books, no coins, only their voices and their quiet. The priest begins not with words, but with stillness. Then he speaks low and soft stories of patience, mercy, seasons, and soiled of kindness, offered without reason, of storms, weathered by shared roofs. The church is not just a place of worship. It is the heart of the village calendar. Weddings begin here, with garlands hung from rafters, candles glowing from every sill. The couple stands before the altar, his hands bound with ribbon, a symbol of the life they now braid together. Outside, the village waits with laughter and bread and dancing feet. In the spring, the churchyard fills with blossoms. Daisies and snowdrops bloom between the graves. Children run laughing between stones too young to know the names etched upon them. But the priest knows, and when he walks among them, speaks their names under his breath, as if reading from a second book, one written in memory and time. And then, of course, there is the bell tower. It is small, no taller than a cottage chimney, but from its window, you can see the whole village. In the mornings, the priest climbs its narrow winding stairs, one careful step at a time, his hand brushing the stone wall for balance at the top. He pulls the rope, and the bell rings. Its tone is not loud, not shrill, but deep and round like a stone dropped in water. It echoes across rooftops, through trees, over the fields, to the very edge of the forest. It wakes the baker, calls the children from sleep, marks the beginning of every day, And in that sound, there is comfort, not just in its regularity, but in its care. Someone is there. Someone is watching the sky, counting the hours. Sounding the bell in times of hardship, when illness spreads, or the harvest fails, or storm winds rip through the fields, it is the church that opens first. Its doors do not close. Its hearth is lit, and its walls hold more than just prayer. They hold hope. Villagers gather in silence, not to speak, but simply to be together. To sit near the altar, to listen to the wind against the stones, to feel that even in sorrow there is shelter, and when the end comes for one of them. The bell rings differently, not loud, but slow. One toll for each year of their life. The villagers stop what they are doing. They bow their heads. And in that moment, even the birds seem to pause. The priest walks the path to the graveyard, his cloak brushing frost or dust or dew, and behind him, the village follows. The church watches. It always does it in summer. The bell tower catches the breeze, and the rope sways gently, as if the bell is whispering, even when it is not struck. And when night falls, the last candle is snuffed, and the wooden door creaks closed, but never locked. For this is not just a building, it is a witness. It knows the names of every child baptized beneath its roof. It has seen every joy, every grief, every promise made under its watch, and in the quiet of night stands alone but not forgotten, the keeper of time, the voice of morning, the soul of the village. The marketplace and the tavernas, the sun rises higher in the sky, and morning chores begin to wane. The village stirs in a different rhythm, a hum of voices, the creak of carts, the flutter of cloth in the breeze. This is not the quiet murmur of prayer or plow. This is the sound of trade, of gossip, of life gathered in one place. Welcome to the marketplace, set in the very center of the village. Just a stone's throw from the church and the green. The market square is no more than a wide-open patch of packed dirt, rimmed by stalls made of wood and canvas. Each day at first light, vendors arrive, some from the village, others from nearby hamlets or far-off farms. They unpack their goods in slow, practiced movements, setting baskets of apples atop barrels, unrolling bolts of hand-dyed wool, arranging eggs, herbs, cheeses, and buttons. The smell here is a mixture of fresh bread, smoke, damp straw, and leather. It clings to the morning air. It's welcoming every passerby with the memory of last week's deals and the promise of today's finds. At one stall, a woman sells ribbons, bright blue, pale rose, and a yellow that glows like sunlight. Children stare at the colors, and mothers smile, weighing coin against joy. At another, a blacksmith has laid out small tools, hooks, nails, horseshoes, and knives, each with his mark etched into the metal, a silent signature that says, "This will last." Farmers arrive with carts of produce, plump onions, muddy turnips, wilted greens still clinging to dew. They speak with few words, but with nods and gestures that speak of seasons and storms. A barter is struck without fuss, a basket of eggs for a spool of thread, a jug of mead for a sharpening stone. There is no rush here, only rhythm. At the center of the market square stands a well, its stones worn smooth from hands and buckets. Children gather round it, their laughter echoing in the hollow space. Sometimes a musician comes, plucking a lute, or blowing softly into a bone flute, and the sound drifts across the stalls like perfume. Elders sit on stools near the well, watching the young, nodding to passers-by, sharing stories that no one asks for, but everyone listens to. As the sun climbs higher, the marketplace begins to thin. Not empty, never empty, but quieter. Some merchants pack up, others stay through the afternoon, their stalls shaded by linen and hope. And as the evening creeps in, the real gathering begins. It's not in the square, but just beyond it, in a low, timbered building with smoke curling from the chimney and warm light flickering behind small glass windows, the tavern. It is more than a place to drink. It is the village's living room, its fire pit, its chorus, its pillow of laughter. Inside, The air is thick with roasted meat, stale ale, and good cheer. A long table runs down the center, scarred with knife marks and spilled wax. Benches line its sides, filled with neighbors and strangers alike, sharing mugs, stories, and silence in equal measure. The tavern keeper is a woman with a voice like gravel and arms, strong enough to lift a barrel without pause. She knows every name, every story, every secret, and guards them all with a wink and a rag over her shoulder. Her son plays the lyre in the evenings, sitting by the hearth with eyes closed, fingers coaxing old tunes from the strings. While the villagers sway softly or hum along, here laughter lives. Not the shrill kind, but the deep belly sort, born from shared hardships and small victories. A lost sheep found, a newborn baby, a roof repaired before the rain. In the corner a dice game unfolds, low stakes and loud groans. Near the fire, two elders play a game with stones and lines carved into the table. Young lovers sit too close. Old friends sit in silence, not from lack of words, but from comfort in not needing any. The ale is warm. The food is simple: stew thick with root vegetables, bread still soft at the center, cheese with a rind sharp enough to sting. But here, tastes like celebration. When the tavern door creaks open in the late hours and someone stumbles out beneath, the stars, they do so with a full belly and a lighter heart. They walk past the empty square, past the now stilled market stalls, and back toward the waiting hush of night. In the village, everything has a place. And while the church keeps the spirit and the green holds the memory, the fields feed the body, it is the market and the tavern that tend to the soul. Here people meet not because they must, but because they can. And in that simple act of meeting, of talking, of raising a mug, the village breathes. It is here that songs are born, jokes are crafted, ideas whispered into the ear of someone who might just listen. It is here, beneath a low timber roof in the circle of candlelight and shadow, that the village remembers. We are not alone. The changing seasons, and then comes winter, not sudden, but deep. The world narrows to hearth and hall. Roads become treacherous, then silent. Snow drapes the village in stillness, softening every sound, muffling every cartwheel and footfall. Stream slows, sometimes freezing at the edges. And the trees stand like sentinels, leafless and waiting. It is a time of retreat, of stories told beside the fire, of mending worn clothes by candlelight, of counting what's been stored and what still remains. Inside the cottages, the air smells of smoke and stew. Blankets are patched and layered thick over straw beds. Boots are set close to the fire to dry. And in every home, there is a quiet rhythm of coughs of the crackling fire, of the wind outside scratching at the thatch like a wandering beast. The elderly do not often walk far in winter. The cold aches their bones. They sit closer to thee. Warmth, sharing tales to pass the long, dark hours. Some stories are of saints and miracles, others of ghosts who wander the woods when the moon is high and the snow is fresh. Children listen wide-eyed, clutching wooden toys or their mother's hand, both frightened and comforted. Outside, not much stirs. The animals are quieter too. Chickens roost early. Cows huddle in the barn, steam rising from their nostrils. Even the dogs lie curled by the hearth, ears twitching only when the door groans open to let in a rush of cold. But even in the deep stillness of winter, life persists. Bread is still baked, water drawn from the icy well, and the tavern even, in storm, still glows with flickering light, a beacon of human warmth in a frozen world. There are feasts, though smaller now, a solstice supper with root vegetables and whatever meat has been cured or kept, single candle placed in the window to remember the warmth that will return. And just when winter begins to feel endless, when the nights seem like they'll never shorten, and the sun rises only to dip again, there is a sign, a single crocus bloom, poking from a patch of thawed soil, a bird call not heard in months, a drop of water falling from the eaves as the snow begins to melt. Spring again. The wheel turns. This is the truth of the village. The seasons are its calendar, its teacher, its soul. Time is not measured in hours, but in tasks: planting, tending, harvesting. Each season holds its own kind of beauty, its own kind of beauty, its own kind of burden, and the villagers, bound together in this rhythm, find meaning in that cycle. They do not long for endless summer, nor fear the chill of winter. They know the turning is part of living. A baby born in winter will crawl by spring. Calf dropped in spring may pull a cart by next harvest. A tree planted today may bear fruit for someone not yet born. In this way, time is not lost. It is given. Season by season. Life by life. At the center of it, all through the green of spring, the golden swell of summer, the fire-hued quiet of autumn, and the hush of winter's hold is the village, small, steady, sleeping and waking again and again. The changing seasons do not pass over the village. They move through it like breath,